Hi, and welcome to lesson number 3 of the Fundamentals of Slovenian Grammar course. So, before we do anything new today, let's review everything we've covered in the last 2 lessons. So, the 2 overlapping circles on screen represent what we will refer to as the 2 worlds of Slovenian grammar. And the left circle represents the world of nouns, or what we also call noun-like words, and the right circle represents the world of verbs. So a noun is a word for a thing or a person or a place. So for example, computer, table, or even myself, Bojan, those are all examples of nouns. Now verbs are what those things, those nouns, can do. I can talk, I can eat, I can sleep. Those are examples of verbs. Now when we say the world of nouns or noun-like words, we don't just have nouns in mind, but adjectives and pronouns as well. And adjectives are words that describe nouns in more detail, that provide more information about them. For example, a big house or a new car. Big and new would be examples of adjectives. And pronouns can replace nouns. So that I don't have to always say my older brother, my older brother, my older brother. I can just say he. That's example of a pronoun. And then we said that the 2 worlds consist of properties or characteristics, and that they have some of these in common while at the same time being different. And we said that when thinking about all of these new words, all of these new terms and concepts, it's very useful to know that they're not all on the same level, so to speak. They don't all belong to the same category, but rather we have 2 categories, and one is word types. So nouns, adjectives, pronouns, and verbs are different word types. But everything that is within these 2 circles, inside of these 2 circles, those are properties. Properties that make up nouns and adjectives and pronouns and so on and so forth. And then we said that because my own name, Bojan, as far as Slovenian is concerned, is just a noun, that we can describe my name in terms of the properties on screen. And so here's where my name or any other name would fit into the diagram. And we can describe it in terms of gender. Bojan is masculine because it ends in a consonant. It's in the singular because there's just one of me, and is in the nominative case because that is the only case that's not a case in practice. So cases, we said, are different versions of the same word, and we can think of the nominative as the original. And we even explained the meaning of the name nominative itself. It means the name case. So if we think of case as version, that's the name version. That's the basic name. That's the actual name of a thing like a table or a person before we put it in different contexts in Slovenian and before we butcher it, so to speak, before we start changing it. And that's pretty much everything we covered last time. Now, today we will be focusing a bit more specifically on gender and number and case. So those 3 qualities that make up noun-like words. And we will refer to those 3 as the big 3. So whenever we say the big 3, we have in mind gender and number and case. So the full name is the big 3 of noun-like words. It has to do with the left circle only and with nouns and noun-like words. So basically these are 3 important grammatical characteristics or properties, and they are shared by all noun-like words. So there is no adjective there's no noun or adjective or pronoun without a certain gender, without a certain number, and without a certain case. So let's have a look at gender, case, gender, number, and case in a bit more detail. Let's just have a quick look at them. So in terms of gender, every single Slovenian noun, every single adjective, and every single pronoun has a certain, is either masculine or feminine or neuter. In terms of number, every single noun and adjective and pronoun in Slovenian is either in the singular or in the dual or in the plural. And in terms of case, every single noun, adjective, and pronoun comes in or is in one of 6 different versions that we call cases, where the first, and they're always listed in the same order from 1 to 6, the first one is the one that's not actually a case. So if English had cases, if modern English had cases, then pretty much all of the words would be in the nominative. Every single word would be in the nominative, except for him and her and us, and those few words, they would fall under another case. Now, it's pretty important to know that we will always speak of these big three, in the same order. It'll always go gender and number and case. So let's explain why that is. Gender is the only one that we cannot change, at least when it comes to nouns. So gender is inherent. A word is inherently and by default either masculine or feminine or neuter, and there's nothing we can do about it. We cannot change it. That's why it's sort of that's why we start with it. Now, the second one is number. Now, we can change the number of a noun. We can say 1 dog, 2 dogs, 1 table, 2 tables. It's perfectly fine. We can do that. But number comes before case because number still happens at a word level. And that's what it says here. So number still sort of is a thing, even if we don't have context. Whereas cases are more contextual. Cases happen not on the individual word level, but mostly on the sentence level. It's a sentence where it's sentences where cases become a thing and they become important. So we have noun-like words, we have the big three, which are the 3 important characteristics of noun-like words, and they are gender and number and case. Now, it's very useful to think of the big three in terms of questions. So let's say, forming a question for each of them. So let's say you're reading a Slovenian text or book or something similar, and you come across a noun-like word in the wild, so to speak, a noun or an adjective or a pronoun. Every single one of those that you come across can be described in terms of those 3 categories. And so we can ask ourselves 3 related questions to those categories. So we come across a word, an adjective or a noun, we can ask ourselves, what is it? And the is just because gender is the most inherent of the characteristics. And so basically we're asking ourselves, is it masculine, is it feminine, or is it neuter? The second question we ask ourselves are, how many of this thing are there? And that is the singular if there's 1 of this thing, the dual if there's specifically 2 of this thing, and the plural if we're dealing with many of this item. And the third question is, what is its role in a sentence? What is it doing in a sentence? And that is, the answer to that question gives us one of the 6 cases or the 6 different versions in Slovenian. So it's very, very useful to think of it in terms of these 3 questions. For every single noun we come across, we can ask ourselves masculine, feminine, or neuter, how many, and what's it doing in a sentence. And if there's no sentence, if it's just a list of new words in a textbook, or if it's just a dictionary entry, if it's a word in isolation without a context, then we can pretty safely assume it's in the nominative case, which is the version reserved for the basic name of this thing. And it's called the name case. So going back to our diagram, we have gender and number and case, and we said those are the big 3. Now, a question here that you might have is, well, why are we counting number as the big 3, as a noun-like word property only, and not also verbs? So gender belongs exclusively to the world of nouns. No verb has anything to do with gender. Case belongs exclusively to the world of nouns as well. No verb has anything to do with case. And our number is shared by both worlds. So why count it just as part of the left circle? Well, when we say the big 3, we specifically have the world of nouns in mind. So whenever we will be using the phrase the big 3, we have in mind those 3 qualities with number as it pertains to the left circle, even though it's part of the right circle equally and is equally as valid there as well. So, of course, number does not belong to the left circle only. Now, the reason we're doing it is that noun-like words are much more difficult. the noun-like words are the ones that people really struggle with. Verbs are much easier. And so that's why I think it's useful to have this phrase big three that encompasses all of the characteristics there. And so if we say the big three, we mean number as it pertains to the left circle, even though we know number is part of the world of verbs as well. And then we're only left with a person, and I just like us to touch on person. So person is the category that is, generally speaking, with an exception, but generally speaking, part of the world of verbs. And we have three persons. And the first person is the speaker. And the first person is basically the I that experiences the world. So for myself, I am the first person. And for you watching, you are the first person for yourself. And the second person is the person closest that the first person can talk directly to, face to face. So in other words, we could call the second person the listener. And the third person is someone else, someone further away, that the first person, for me, can talk to the second person about. That is the third person. So everyone is for himself or herself the first person, as long as we're not having an out-of-body experience. An out-of-body experience is one where we view ourselves as the third person, but otherwise we're all the first person, and then the person that we can talk to directly, the listener, is the second person, someone further away is the third person. And that covers person. So that pretty much covers everything. And if we review, briefly review everything before bringing today's lesson to an end, we have the two worlds, the world of nouns, the world of verbs. We have different properties that they are made up of. And today we explained that the specific combination of gender and number and case we will refer to as the big three as it pertains to the world of nouns, when it has to do with the world of nouns. So hopefully this was useful or interesting, and I hope you can benefit from it. And yeah, I wish you all the best on your Slovenian journey, and hopefully see you in the next lesson.